You are watching Beyond Design, a video podcast that inspires and encourages architects, engineers, and aspiring construction industry professionals to develop their skills and pursue professional careers beyond design. I am Brian Ernest Regalado, an architect by profession practicing as a construction cost management specialist. Join me as I sit down with experts in the construction industry to talk about their professional practice, principles, processes, the lessons they have learned, and how they make an impact. Thank you once again for joining us tonight for another episode of Beyond Design, Women in the AEC Industry. So in tonight's episode of Beyond Design, we are very privileged to have with us Architect Cathy Saldaña to talk about the business of architecture. So Architect Cathy was a UP Diliman student later in the late turbulent 80s and was elected in the prestigious University Student Council in 1987. She graduated from the UP Diliman College of Architecture in 1990 and in 2000 graduated with honors at the Asian Institute of Management for her master's degree. Cathy is currently one of the several prominent female architects in the country. She is known for hospitality design, retail, mixed-use, residential high-rises, in industrial cold storage facilities, island developments, master planning, feasibility studies, and is one of the pioneers in sustainable resort design. She has been doing challenging and technical work out there in the Philippine Islands along coastlines in major cities and provinces. She did 2 airports for Ayala Land alongside several Ayala Land hotels such as Seda Lio in Nido, Palawan, local design renovations of Shangri-La Resorts, Filinvest, Punta Fuego Group, Discovery, Marriott Hotels, and several private island luxury hospitality places. So she recently was awarded for Best Architecture Design for an office tower in the Asia Philippine Property Awards for her 22-story Diamond Tower in Davao City. She is part of several women's leadership groups, the Urban Land Institute or ULI, where she also sits in the current board of trustees. The Asia CEO Forum, the EUROF, or East Asian Regional Organizations for Planning and Human Settlements. And she is also an international associate of the American Institute of Architects and was formerly president of the UP College Architecture Alumni Foundation, and in 2019 was elevated as fellow at the United Architects in the Philippines. So hers is a familiar voice in conventions and conferences, both locally and internationally, as she has been and continues to speak at hospitality investment conferences, and is one of the 4 directors of Anthology every year in Intramuros. She is a frequent speaker and a featured architect at World Decks. So she has recently delivered lectures and papers in Florence, Italy, Palermo, Italy, and Newcastle, Australia. She is the principal and CEO of PDP Architects in Makati City. So we're very privileged to have with us tonight Architect Cathy Saldaña. Hi, Cathy. Good evening.
Good evening to everyone, and hello. I'm really very pleased to be here to share, to enjoy, to relax, to talk.
Yeah. Cathy, I was hesitant to really do an introduction because for someone like you, I don't think you need to be introduced, especially in the local construction industry. I mean, you are in every magazine, in every architecture convention, and it seems impossible for anyone not to know you. Um, but with that, we are very privileged to have you with us. Thank you for guesting in our show.
It's an honor. It's an honor. It's always a great opportunity to share knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. For all our viewers out there, I know some of you are watching live, and some might be watching the recorded version of this. But please, and well, and some of you might be watching locally, and some from Europe, and from the rest of the world. So please feel free to interact with us through the comment section as this talk goes along, and even after the show ends. So, Cathy, you're here to talk to us about a very timely topic. It has been always been a crucial part of our practice, which is the business side of architecture.
Of course,
And
yeah.
yes, and I think with this one, this will um, dismantle all those myths that tend to dichotomize the business side and the professional side of architecture. Before we go to your lecture or to your talk, we'd like to hear more about you. So if you can. I know you are one of the most successful and consequently among the busiest architecture firms or architects in the Philippines. So it would be good for us to know, what have you been doing lately? What projects have you been working on? And tell us a little more about yourself.
So our company has been quite involved in the course of looking for solutions for the pandemic. And we have volunteered our services for various attempts and solutions for setting up triage, for assisting in some hospitals and other private institutions, barangay halls. And then we have been quite busy now doing more of planning, master planning,
Mhm.
in fact. Some of our projects with major developers have been put on a pause. But you know what? Other developers and private, smaller, I would say, startups in real estate are being quite aggressive now and focusing on the planning side. So that's what we've been keeping busy on, as well as preparing pre-design studies, feasibility studies, and front end design work.
Okay, that's good to know that business is still good even in this pandemic. So, Cathy, while most architects pursue or have pursued postgraduate studies in design or planning, you took another path by pursuing your postgraduate degree from the best business school in Asia, which is AIM. Why is that?
Um, this was a period, year 1999, and I graduated year 2000, when I felt that we architects needed to have a stronger grasp on business. And when
Mhm.
I say business, it's not just business development or sales or marketing. It's about understanding finance. It's knowing accounting so that when you delegate, you do not abdicate. And when you teach, you really teach from the perspective of knowing not just theories and titles, but principles and how they work. Like you should know how to prepare a balance sheet and how to read one. So
Mhm.
I felt that I needed to understand the whole operational aspect and look at architecture also, not just as a practice, but to make sure it is profitable.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that you said it has to be profitable, because most professionals tend to forget that it's not all about the delivery of good service, but it has to be the delivery of good service that ends up with a good profit. So
Yes.
you have been awarded recently best architecture design for an office building project in Davao, which is actually nothing new to you. having been a consistent figure in magazine and talks, how much of your success will you attribute to good designs, to your good designs, and how much to your good business management and leadership skills?
I still believe that good design will constitute about 70%
Mhm.
because it is still the product and the output of our
Mhm.
work. But 30% of it is all about management. And it's also all about building, not just the structure, but building people, whether it be the teams that you're building or you're
Mhm.
building relationships with clients and stakeholders, suppliers, contractors, so that it becomes a whole consolidated effort of putting together a really good project. And then the message itself, the design, which constitutes about 70%, becomes even stronger because the people who will populate it, the people who help build it, the people who own it, all understand what it's all about.
So you said 70-30. So that 30% is still substantial. In 30, not doing good with that 30% can break one's professional practice. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
It's really so important to establish good relationships with your team, with your design group, with people. It's the stakeholders, everybody involved in the building industry
Mhm.
is so vital.
Okay, so, do you think there is a dichotomy between the practice of the profession and running a business? What happens when you take out one of them of the you take one of them out of the picture?
Well, I would say that there is indeed a dichotomy because you're managing the practice with its own set of
Mhm.
ethics, its own artistry, the whole creative aspect. And then on the other hand, you're also balancing the financial, the profitability, the durability, the sustainability of the business. You cannot keep churning good ideas and giving it away. You
Mhm.
cannot also be stretching yourself too much and too far. So those are the important items to keep when you are maintaining that balance. And that balance results from having a good sense of business.
Okay, so it looks like, in that short, concise answer, it tells us that, a good business model is necessary for, do practicing the profession, right? You said, you cannot, keep on giving, um, concepts, or, without making sure there's revenue, um, coming in after that. So, and
That's correct.
I'm sure you will talk more about this in the
Yes.
lecture.
Yes, you have
Yeah,
to strike a balance between developing that relationship and understanding the respect for our profession.
yeah, and I think the sustainability comes into in that part. So you are without a doubt among the best and most respected architects in the Philippines. I didn't say among the female architects, because you can play it out in the big, against the the male, led, or the male led architecture firms. But I am sure our viewers would like to hear from you how you do run the business of architecture, both in the present time and as we advance in the new normal. So I think this is where, where we you will present, what you have, for tonight.
Yes, and I hope that everybody learns. And if you have any questions for me, let me know. And if you want to reach out after this lecture, let me know. I'm always willing to help and to teach. So
Yeah.
I've been invited to teach in some schools, but I said, you know what? The venue of lecturing will be the most appropriate for me, as well as teaching my teams. So here we are in Beyond Design, Women in the AEC Industry, Beyond Design with Brian Regalado, the business of architecture. Thank you so much for sharing this evening with me. So I begin with letting you understand first and foremost the global issues right now. Where are we? So on our first slide, okay, we will you will have to understand that for 2020, truly a very difficult year, For management, this is about being authoritarian, but consultative. When you say authoritarian, it's not because you're dictating everything, but because you are in control. People now are experiencing stress and that strange feeling of where are we going? What's going to happen to us and to the world? They need to look up to a leader. And this leadership has to have that clarity. This leadership must be inspiring, inspirational, and this leadership has to also be decisive. That kind of leadership in architecture is also to be evident in other professions, in businesses, and in government. And we need to look beyond work right now. Aside from checking on the output of people, you also have to care. There has to be concern. Need to understand how are they in the bigger scheme of things. How is their family? How is their health? How are they coping? Is one of your architects married to a frontliner? How is that being managed? Is an elder person in their household sick or contracted COVID? What sort of images are we seeing in the homes of our staff, of our architects, as they all do work from home? And then we practice a lot of empathy. And then you focus not just on people, your clients, people, your contractors, people, your suppliers, but people, your teams, focusing on their health, on their safety. Never has the role of human resources of HR been as important as now. Very crucial. Very, very crucial now to focus on people. And at the same time, understand finances. The key phrase here, as I've said in a previous lecture to a chapter of the United Architects of the Philippines, is prudent fiscal management. You have to know how to control. You have to know how to hold resources, manage the expenses, cut down on what is unnecessary, and be able to handle expectations and keep things practical. Now is not the time for frills and thrills. So, yes, as we move forward on the next slide,
Mhm.
we zero in on architecture for 2020, approaching years 2021 and 2022. There is market uncertainty all over the world. We are not alone in this worry. We are all operating with speculations, following a 60-40 diagram of will this project push through or not? And in most cases, it is never a balance of 50-50 now, or I would say a 20-80 leaning towards success. Nowadays, everybody's rethinking. Everyone is trying to understand, am I going to push through with this work, with this project? Shall we build it? So there is that speculation. And then we also are revisiting certain design paradigms. The way we used to design buildings, the density of our commercial spaces. How about the widths of our corridors, the touch points, the doors? How are they being opened? How are elevators being managed? How are people sharing space bubbles in a corridor? These are now being revisited. And we are now almost working from home. And this remote working is affecting people. Once again, for some it's working, and for some people it isn't. They're bothered by the concerns domestically. They are not ready to show what they have at home. They're not ready to share all their paperwork with their family. And so everybody is going through that phase, that change. And yet we are all planning for the future. And this is how we will plot out architecture for the next years to come. And then this is also another period for us to enhance our operations. This is the period to revisit the people. This is also the period to visit training programs and to understand how you could redo your marketing collaterals, perhaps rework your website, understand and clean up your drafting manuals. There is so much that we can do internally. As we move forward to the next slide, we also look at what is really architecture alongside management? You see, no matter what business, no matter what operations, if it's a factory, it's a retail store for candies, it's a law practice, or it's an architecture practice, every firm has to have AFA, accounting, finance, and administration. Every firm has to have the operations and production aspect. And every firm has to have the business development and sales. In most cases, the entrepreneur, the principal, becomes the head of business development and sales. And this is all part of the business triangle. Every firm has all these three. And as we zero in on the next slide on the business of architecture, we understand that what is accounting, finance, and administration for architecture? It's contracts management. It's man hours review. It's understanding HR, especially in these times, very crucial. It's going through your very strict and regimented accounting processes, your admin, your accounts receivables and accounts payables. We architects are very guilty of this because we are always focusing on the creative and the production output. We forget we need to build because we have to pay our salaries. And then the whole financial aspect is also so vital. And of course, government compliance. You move then next to operations. What is the business of architecture operations? It's drafting, design production. It's the monitoring of the projects. It's the management of the day-to-day, of all the deadlines, and it's also the coordination with all the engineers, MEPFS, and lighting, acoustics, landscape, coordinating with your blueprinting companies. It's a lot of operations work. And yet, you move forward to business development and sales. What is so important here would be relationship management. Relationship with your clients, with all the stakeholders that I've mentioned earlier, like your suppliers, your contractors, your professional reputation. This is so important. Do you really want to be known only for high-end houses? Do you always want to be known to be exclusive, not inclusive? How is your visual image? How are you approaching your social media? Vis-a-vis ethics. How are you understanding business development? How are you managing your clients, your sales? How are you revisiting former account? How are you monitoring your contracts? That's all part of business development and sales in architecture.
Okay.
And then,
Kathy, before we proceed to this one, I'd like to encourage everybody to feel free to send your questions via the comment section. You can type it down there, and then just specify who it is for, so that we can make the most out of this time to raise our concerns, our concerns or issues, or if there's anything more that we want to learn from Architect Cathy. So, Cathy, I hope we can we will be stopping from time to time to
sure,
as questions come.
it becomes a conversation, a real exchange. It's like an after dinner coffee experience with all of
Yeah,
you. Or if you have a plate of dessert, that would be good. Or even a glass of wine sounds good. Yes.
yeah. So go ahead, and let's proceed with your slides.
Please, yes. Let me know. Let me know if you'd like me to proceed as we are
Yeah,
awaiting questions.
yeah. Go ahead. Let's proceed.
Okay. So once again, as you move forward on business development, on sales, on contracts management, accounting, finance, and administration, and then operations, you understand that the creative output is so important. You keep the nucleus of creativity right in the very core. Okay? So that you understand now that whether it's retail, it's architecture, it's manufacturing, all these elements are present in your in your business triangle, and then the very core of your business is in the middle. The nucleus of our work is in creativity. So as we move forward, so accounting, finance, and administration. The most important and critical aspects of this for architects would be ensuring cash flow, especially now. Okay? Ensure your cash flow is healthy. Very basic. Profit equals revenue minus costs. Run it yourself. Assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. And assets is also liabilities plus revenue minus expenses and dividends. And understand what is your burn. What is your cash burn rate? Know it fully every month. Therefore, add up the first 3 months. It becomes 1 quarter so that you have your 4 quarterly burn. You understand your annual burn rate, the rate at which a company is utilizing cash reserves in your cash balance. This is how much you are utilizing and how much you need to keep your operations going. And this is also where you adjust. When you know that you do not want to have this high a burn, then you adjust. Is it the total number of staff that you have? Or do you have a lot of phone lines attached to people? Do you have expenses that are unnecessary? Is your office too fancy? Do you really need it now at this time? Take a look and understand your burn. Next slide. We proceed on the next page. We also take a look at our strategies for management, especially in these times, all the way until next year. Focus on increasing your revenue. There may be some past due accounts that you need to work on. Okay? Billings, pipelines, probably adjust your professional fees, reduce your payroll expenses and your direct costs. Delay or defer other expenses that are unnecessary. Discard your unprofitable revenue streams. And if you need so, but be careful, you seek financial help from the banks. Understand factoring, where you are giving to the banks your receivables. And understand as well as your inventory, which you could convert into cash. So yes, indeed, never about the delivery of just of good service, but good service with good profit. Otherwise, not last. As we move on to the next slide, we are reminded about that story of Ayn Rand, that novel in Fountainhead, and Howard Rourke. You're never about just your design. It's about the practicality and the reality of running a practice. So take a look at all your tangible assets, your cash, your realizable accounts receivables, your inventory, your real estate. Take a look at your intangible assets. This is also so important. Your brand value, your relationships, and always, always, always focus on your people. I have never been so in touch with my staff until this pandemic. We have Viber chats for every project. And, I know what's going on in their lives right now. And it's so important that you take care of them.
Okay.
Okay?
Cathy,
Yes.
there's just a comment here, and we will just read it from Nick Smith. Thank you, Nick, for watching us tonight. So the comments on managing cash are particularly relevant now. Only those businesses that do well will survive or be able to ramp up again when things improve. What do you think about that, Cathy?
I
The,
so agree with you, Nick. Mr. Smith, be very nice to meet you. Yes, we agree on your statements. Exactly.
okay.
Those who know how to do well with it on managing cash will be the only ones who will survive and ramp up when things improve. I love how you put it. Thank you, Nick Smith.
So okay, so let's proceed.
Yes. Okay, as I've mentioned and I keep saying it, it's not about a focus on concrete, steel, glass, the ego on the imprint of the floor plan or your perspective. It's all about the people. Focus on your teams, focus on your clients. The core management is so important. Control, ownership, resilience, and endurance. These are the qualities of leadership that we need for the core management. Understanding as well your sanitation and infection control for those people who will have to go to the office. Understand as well the physical setup and the social distancing when you need to go to the job site. Today, two of our key associates had to go to a job site with SM. And as we did a kickoff for a project, and wow, they needed to manage that social distancing because they had to go visit an ongoing job site already where the foundations are being laid. So it's also very important that we manage the logistics and support. And like before, you just let them be, let them do public transport. Now we're trying our best to take care of them for transportation, for food, for communications, voice, data. So in our company, in PDP Architects, way before the pandemic, we've been feeding our people free lunch way before the pandemic. So feeding them now is nothing new to us. So you also must create financial and operational arrangements, whether it's a full work from home setup and they need support with their technologies. Lately, our company has been sending chairs and tables and PCs to our people. So some architectural firms are also working on a 3-day or a 2-day or a 4-day scheme. On our side, we're working on a full week. And before we had about 3 people who were in charge of implementation, who were simply working on a 4-day, 3-day work week. But now, because our projects are going to be restarting on implementation, they're going to be back on board full time again. So I also hope that not a lot of architects are doing work suspension. We need to all take care of each other. That's why for our firm also, when we have projects out of town, we reach out to the architects in those locations, not just to give work, but also make it easier for our people not to commute anymore from Manila to Laguna or from Manila to Davao. So I always reach out every time we need to do something out of town. We also need to understand the whole work from home scenario, making sure that technology and tools are provided to everybody. This is the whole inclusivity aspect of this management. And then moving forward, you also have now the time to manage your social media. Everyone is on the internet now. Everyone is looking at their Facebook, Instagram. Everyone's trying to check out the website of anybody. And so focus on your portfolio. I myself now, we're restructuring our website and using this period to be able to creatively upgrade it. We're using this period to work with our professional photographers to take pictures on the outside of our projects because it's easier now. Traffic is less. There are less crowds now that are in the lobbies of the retail centers that we designed. So it works. Today is also time. This period is also a good time for most people now to update their resumes, rewrite their CVs, rework their portfolios, and then once again, continue to train. There are 3 important skill sets that we architects and builders have to always know. Oral skills, to be able to explain your designs and your work. Graphical, we all need to know how to draw, whether digitally or freehand. And narrative. Knowing how to write is always a plus for architects and for any professional for that matter. And understand which platform in social media works for you. For us, it's Instagram. So we are finding it also very easy for us to follow other designers on Instagram. And to us, it has less clutter. It's so nice to look at the works of Norman Foster, 𝗕𝗲𝘅, to follow designers all over the world or in the Philippines, to look at Ed Calma's posts, to look at suppliers' posts. It's wonderful. I like Instagram. So next. Now is also the time for you to understand your specialization. So what is your niche? Towards 2024, 2025, where are we going? There will, all over the world, there will be more infrastructure and government projects. There will be new urban centers with post-COVID design standards as we are now looking at new cities to migrate to, not just here in the Philippines, but many parts of the world. People now are realizing we do not have to concentrate ourselves into one urban center. We want to grow our own food. We want to breathe more fresh air. If we're going to get locked down again, it would be nice if we have a view of the sea. Nowadays, do we really need those massive medical complexes where you only have one ingress and egress. It's nicer now to have those healthcare facilities and centers, testing and specialty clinics that are spread out. You have parks and gardens in between, and therefore create a more absolute atmosphere of wellness, and not just going there for medicine, but going to a place for healing. And when it comes to hospitality, luxury will be the first to take off. Luxury and remote escapes will be the first to find its way. If it's from the city, some place where you can drive to, or some place where you could take a boat, or some place where you could park a private plane. So this is the wave of hospitality. For residential, most especially high-end, it will always thrive. People now will rethink the density of residential towers where you are pumping 7,000 people into one building. Is it right? Even SOM thought of that. Must we do it again? And then more than anything, with food as a focus, food as a major need, the manufacturing, distribution, logistics for food is so vital now. Also, we are going to be in the midst of reconfiguring retail, public, liturgical, and civic spaces for them to work, not just for the short term, but for the mid and the long term. There will be new design typologies for residential towers, and we need to retransform our airports and other transport terminals, understanding less touch points to make them more successful, to have less infection between people. We now move forward to the next slide, where we take a look at our planning and growth and expansion for our firms, understanding exactly how do you hire from now on. You always hire for integrity and character. You hire for what I call utak and puso in Tagalog, which means brain and heart. You look for that quality of malasakit, which means concern, sacrificial concern, concern that goes beyond your call of duty. That is malasakit. It is such a beautiful Filipino word that centers on the service culture of the Filipino. And this is something that we share with the rest of the world now, as we find a lot of Filipinos being frontliners in many parts of the globe. So these are the people we look for now. These are the people we hire as we take care of our HR systems, our cash flow, and our prudent fiscal management. And for our business development, look at your specialization. Understand your niche. It's not just about your specialization in design. How about it like you're like Brian, you're specializing in cost management. How about it that you're specializing in BIM? Many factors. Or furniture design. Or staging for condos. What about managing your key accounts very well and handling your valued clients with much respect, especially during these times? And for the operations, always remember the work from home is allied with the remote access, your logistics planning, and your technology. Always remember that we have to have and keep that spirit of collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, if you're working in the urban center of Metro Manila or in New York City, and you have projects up in Hudson or Binghamton, or going to New Jersey, or you're in Metro Manila, you have projects in Batangas or in Davao, look for partners, work with regional and provincial local architects, and help spread not just your work and responsibilities, but creativity and good management skills. Therefore, you don't even have to fly nor create transportation for your people anymore. Take care of everybody. Today and the near future, it's all about mentoring and peer review. And always, always, always remember, as I also approach my last few slides, I will keep focusing on sustainability, on green. Never before have we understood how important it is for us to have a relationship with the earth and its environment. Sure, in the plague a century ago, it came from the rats. Now this time it came from the bats. They all came from the earth. And our respect for plant life, for animal life, soil is so important. And you take into consideration the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, the SDG 17, because you take care of the earth from now on. And the elements of all green design becomes an enabler for you to create a self-sustaining community, whether it be a home or a subdivision, a village, or a building. We have our slowdown now all the way to December. We see it still all the way to 2021 March. In the meantime, let's stop doing unnecessary self-promotion that is very vague or misleading, or trying to sell something that is not yours. How about selling free plans and free consultations, therefore misleading the public that professionals are free? It is also unreasonable that now some people are lowering their fees and their rates. And the proliferation of unsolicited proposals are all thumbs down. Now is the time for us to take care of each other. Let's uphold professional ethics, create and keep that sense of respect, and return to the core values of being good human beings, not just for our practice, but for each other and for our children. Understanding as well how to screen business opportunities and the commitment to succeed, not just one, but for all. This is how we will all survive together. And as we take care of our people, we take a look. There is anxiety, there is loss, there is grief, so much stress, the difficulties of touch points. I don't want to touch that button by the guard. I don't want to touch that elevator button. Must I press that door handle? The disturbances that's affecting our lives, our businesses, the viral load, most especially in hospitals and in other public spaces. And yet again, we architects, we can help draft solutions. We can redefine spaces and re-understand and reconfigure space bubbles, knowing fully well the new anthropometrics, the new sense of ergonomics. How do you spread people in a park from now on? How do you let people enjoy space altogether? What do you redefine? How do you handle materiality? Which materials must you keep using? Those that do not harbor viruses and bacteria, those that are not porous, they are wonderful in public spaces. And more than anything, we are responsible for the earth. We are responsible for our built environment. And for the future of architecture, being human is the most important aspect of all our core values. We take care of each other. As we take care of each other, we take care of the environment and the earth, not just for today, but also for tomorrow. So, yes, thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful, wonderful time to share my passions with you.
Yeah. Cathy, let me thank you for that. It's really difficult to talk about business in just one, in just one 40-minute segment, and for especially for architects who have not been really actively managing the business side of architecture, sometimes these things can become sometimes these things become alien to them. But let me I took note of, okay, somebody, I took note of all what you presented, and I'd say you've very much covered the entire spectrum of what there is to learn in managing the business of architecture. and I will just share some questions or ask some questions, and we will go through the slides. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But before I do that, let me read some comments. Okay, from Nick. Nick Smith says Nick Smith is the immediate past president of ICPMA. So ICPMA believes in reasonable profit for all. So
Yes. With you, Nick.
and then there's another question here from Charwin. Hi, Charwin. Thank you for tuning in. As a female architect, what are the challenges you've experienced in pursuing your career, and a piece of advice to your fellow female architects who wanted to be successful like you? Kudos, Architect Cathy.
Hi, Charwin. I would say one of the challenges I've experienced is whenever in job sites visiting, one of the biggest challenges is finding a proper and a clean bathroom, a clean restroom. That is a challenge. The other challenge is when you do not have your own hard hat and you have to wear a typical good for everybody hard hat that you know somebody else wore. Yikes! It's gonna touch my hair, right? You're so sensitive about all these elements of sanitation as a female architect. But apart from those little tidbits and shallow experiences on sanitation, I would say that one of the challenges is really letting people understand that a female architect can do just as well as a male architect. And in fact, we have found that we are more attuned with details than with the male architects. And also, another advice is do not let contradictions, do not let stereotypes, do not let words like, oh, female architect, or woo woo, or somebody whistling at you on the job site. Let it all slide. Just carry on, head held up high. Do well and show them that you've got what it takes to design and to build well. Confidence.
Thank you, Kathy, for that. And you know, uh, you've proven that with all these years of practice, Kathy.
Thank
And
you.
I would say that I agree with everything you said because you did all that. No, so okay. So as we wait for other questions, you said that there is market uncertainty, and in this and the nature of the construction industry itself is that projects there is always a big element of uncertainty when it comes to managing projects. And how do you think this pandemic is actually making it more uncertain than what it already is? Because as we said, project construction projects, unlike other projects in other domains, is very much uncertain. So how do we how is it different now with this pandemic, and how do you think we should move forward with that uncertainty?
What makes this pandemic really different is that not only are we having a bit of a critical time and a challenge in designing because we're all now trying to cooperate, collaborate, work remotely. But the second challenge is the construction.
Mhm.
Whether it's a house in a high end subdivision, or recently we all found out in the news that there was a high rise in BGC that is so badly affected with COVID positive construction workers. So you have that risk
Mhm.
more than ever now. The risks before were schedule delays, cost slippages, the risks on time, on cost, on quality, on safety. Those were the four risks. Now,
Mhm.
there's that whole risk of contracting a disease just by attending a meeting. So it fuels the uncertainty. And I really think until we get a vaccine, that uncertainty will remain. In the
Mhm.
meantime, we need to focus on handling remote work and being able to manage job sites with good sanitation. That is the key here for our industry to survive.
So, okay, Kathy, you're one of the few. I know you're one of the few firms who have adopted, really embraced digitalization, and this allows you to work more efficiently in terms of remote work, collaborative work approaches. So, would you recommend to other architects, especially even to the younger ones, to the smaller firms, to really adopt a digital strategy in transforming your work or their workplace?
I really believe that setting up your digital platform, understanding whether you can also do virtual presentations and invest in good technologies, whether software or hardware, these are the most vital approaches now to managing this critical aspect and period of our practice. Never have I been so best friends with our IT manager until now, really. So now we really are always in touch with him. And it's just so vital because file management now, it's all remote, and understanding as well cloud based investment
Mhm.
are really good for you.
I believe that too. This is the time also where, as a digital education company, um, we have invested heavily on technology that will make us do the things we never thought we would have done prior to this pandemic. So, on
Yes.
the finance side, Kathy, you shared with us that there is a cash burn rate. So, is there a index or a ratio that our audience can follow, that for them to know that how much, what is that line that or the threshold that tells them we have to stop burning cash? Is it, let's say, is it 0.70% of your revenue, 50% of your revenue? Is there a particular cash burn rate that we have to just we keep have to keep on looking at,
I,
that
I
we do
think
not have to exceed?
I think that initial 80 to 20% is safe, so
Hmm.
that 20% becomes your net. And then, so 80% normally handles all your expenses. And then you keep savings of 20%. But that should be your minimum.
Hmm.
If you could strive to do a 70-30, that would be a good ratio. Doing an 85-15 or a 90-10, 90 in favor of expenses, and you're only retaining 10% of profit,
Hmm.
your margins, that is not good, because that means that you will not have much savings for the next months. So prudent fiscal management allows you to really know, as you are already spending on day two, you're already thinking of what you need to collect by day six. So you have to have that mindset. As you are churning work, you
Hmm.
always have to think about what is coming back in terms of your accounts receivables.
So that 80/20, that means that the 80% also already covers for the principal's
Yeah,
salary.
yes.
Some might think that 20% is that remaining 20% is where they're going to get their principal share. So it should be within that 80%, right?
Absolutely. And then you keep the 20% for the bad years. You know, some of our most respected developers in the Philippines, like Ayala Land or SM for that matter, they gave loan and rental reprieves because they have reserves. They were
Mm-hmm.
able to afford giving free rent because they have reserves. We, as architects and engineers, we in the building industry should start looking at the future this way as well, so that we know what to keep for the rainy days. And we are in the rainy days right now. This is the long, long hibernation. This is the long winter. Like, people are saying, oh, it's ghost month right now. Really? You're thinking about ghost month? I think it's a ghost year. So, you know,
Yeah,
consider
that
your
that's
very
yeah, that's
important.
correct. So, Kathy, how do you manage? I mean, some people, to some professionals, especially the starting ones, they tend to overload themselves with projects, because they only look at the number of projects drives the revenue, right? And they forget that there is also a bad side to having a lot of projects, uncontrolled number of projects all happening at the same time. What's your advice on this? I mean, you are used to really having a lot of projects, but how do you maintain the balance that all projects are always on the green, meaning they drive revenue, but they don't add up so much on the costs that can break your whatever profit you're looking at?
That's a good question, Brian. There is what you call the Pareto principle, the
Mm-hmm.
80-20. When you're putting so much effort into so many things, and yet the one that's bringing you revenue is only the 20% of all of that. You're putting so much effort on the 80%, but it's not really bringing you revenue. So, and it just isn't in our industry. It's in many industries, even in retail. They study it. In a department store, you have something like 100 products, and out of those 100, only the 20 are really taking care of the revenue of the department store. So it goes both ways, even for
Yeah,
architecture. Pareto principle. Google it.
yeah.
80 20.
I love that Pareto principle. That is on quality management, but it is really a useful tool for almost all aspects of the business, because we have to maintain quality in the business. So, guys,
That's
always remember, focus on the 20% that brings in your 80% revenue. You will not go wrong with that. Thank you
yeah.
for sharing that, Kathy. And you mentioned that 2021 to 2025 can be I mean, beyond that, there is really going to be a massive a massive influx of projects, and this is the time that we need to prepare. Um, uh, on To add to that, let me add to that. Actually, the what is projected until 2050 is that we need 13,000 buildings a day. You can Google it at for the audience. You can Google it up. You can look at the Autodesk blog, or I think at the McKinsey, the global data. 13,000 buildings per day.
Wow.
Why is that? Because by 2050, and I think this aligns with what you just mentioned a while ago, the SDG. No, by 2050, we are 10 billion. I'm not sure how much we are now. I mean, in terms of world population, but 2050, that's 10 billion people, and that means there's a lot for all architects and construction professionals to take to be a part of. And I think the what you just shared here can really teach them to manage their professions while they are yet to scale up, because that the thing with is that right, Kathy?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And they have to perfect it now while it's small, because the problems will grow exponentially as they scale up. So what's your advice to those who are already at that stage where they are ready to scale up? I mean, especially after this pandemic, there will really be a sudden flow of projects. So, what's your advice for scaling up in
It's
terms
a
of business?
it's like the analogy of comparing ourselves to doctors. We're
Mm-hmm.
all general practitioners, but make sure you're a specialist in one or two project types, because you will be so sought after,
Mm-hmm.
particularly because of not just not just know-how, expertise. Once you have that, then you will really shine.
Yeah. So specialization. Specialization is the key, and And okay, so anything else um, that you might want to share? Especially, I mean, this show is about women, but what you just practice is not what you just shared is really for everybody, regardless of the sex they identify with. I mean, good business is founded in good fundamentals of understanding the business of architecture and the architecture itself. So,
Yes.
um, um, for as we come to a close, Cathy, can you share um, if there is any three things that they just have to remember to keep them always to keep them at the good business standing? What are those three?
Okay, the first one is prudent fiscal management.
Hmm.
The second one is focus on people.
Okay.
The third is building relationships. There.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's okay. So thank you very much, Cathy, for joining us tonight. And I know
So
this. I know you are very busy, and it's truly a wonderful experience to have you on the show.
wonderful, wonderful. Such an honor. Thank you so much, everyone. I think the mere fact that you are attuned and learning during this pandemic is so good. It's very good. Even I've been attending webinars and learning as well.
I
So I
hope
got
we,
building professional license during the pandemic. I enrolled in a real estate management course. So it's all good for us.
yeah. I hope we can invite you again for as we do more of this. I mean, this is just our first season, and it's truly an honor to have you to at the end of this season, because it really makes it like it really brings this season end to very close to us, because you're somebody we can identify with
Thank
in the practice.
is such an honor. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Cathy. So, okay, thank you very much for tuning in with us for another episode of Beyond Design and Women in the AEC Industry. This is our eighth and final episode. And in the coming days, we will have a break, and we will resume our Beyond Design by October. So stay tuned, because this October we will starting October, and and until next year, maybe until uh, middle of next year, we will talk about advancing the construction industry in the new normal. So thank you very much for joining us all this for the past 3 months, and we will see you again when we resume Beyond Design Season 2. So thank you and good night. You are watching Beyond Design, a video podcast that inspires and encourages architects, engineers, and aspiring construction industry professionals to develop their skills and pursue professional careers beyond design. I am Brian Ernest Regalado, an architect by profession practicing as a construction cost management specialist. Join me as I sit down with experts, in the construction industry to talk about their professional practice, principles, processes, the lessons they have learned, and how they make an impact.